So this is lesson 7.1c, the third video in this review of solving equations. And let's continue on with example number 11. So when we have something like 100x squared, and we're saying that equals 300x. First of all, I would rewrite this equation, set it equal to 0. So we're going to subtract 300x from both sides. And then I'm going to factor out what's common. What's common is a 100 and an x. So I'm going to pull a 100x out, and that's going to leave me with an x there and a 3 there. And if I distribute that back, I'm going to get 100x squared minus 300x. Alright, so that's the factoring. Now I'm going to find out what number I can put in here for x, or numbers that are going to make either this 0, so that when I multiply it by this I get 0, or this quantity here 0, so that when I multiply 0 times whatever this is, I get 0. Notice this 2 up here in our original equation. That means I'm going to have 2 answers. So I should know that at the end I'm going to get 2 answers. So what can I multiply 100 by to get 0? Well, that answer is going to be 0. 0 times 100 is 0. And what does this have to be to make it 0? Well, if this were a 3, 3 minus 3 is 0. So I get that. Okay? And that ends up being your answers, 0 and 3. So x can be 0 or x can be 3. Alright, keep going here. Next example, which is example number 12, says that we have x minus 2, and we're going to multiply that by x plus 1, and we're going to say that equals 4. Now your first thought might be, oh, well, these are already in parentheses. If x is 2 or x is negative 1, that would make each one of these 0. The problem is this is not 0, so I can't do that yet. The only way I can solve this and find out what's going to make this 0 and what's going to make that 0 is if the other side of the equal sign is also 0. Since it's not, I have to go a long roundabout way to solve this. So I need to do the FOIL method. So, first terms, x times x is x squared. The outside, the O in FOIL, is going to be plus 1x. The inside is going to be negative 2x. And then the last, this times this, is going to be negative 2. Oops, that's an x, isn't it? And that equals 4. Alright, so now let's set that equal to 0. X squared minus 1x minus 2 equals 4. Subtract 4 from both sides, and I get x squared minus 1x minus 6x equals 0. Now I'm in the position where I can make 2 parentheses and set it equal to 0. So I've got an x there and an x there. I'm looking at 2 numbers multiplied together give me negative 6, added give me negative 1. So 3 times 2 is 6, and the difference between 3 and 2 is 1, so those are the numbers I'm going to use, is 3 and 2. So I'm just going to put a 3 and a 2 in there, and because this is negative, my largest number has to be negative. Now what is going to be on here? Well, negative 3 times 2 times positive 2 is negative 6, so this is going to be a positive. And negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1, so I know I'm okay there. So, in order to solve this, x minus 3 has to equal 0, so x is going to equal 3 for this one, or negative 2 for this one. And that ends up being my answer. So, again, this has to be a 0. So you had to use the FOIL and then move this over here in order to get our 0 right there. So that's why it took a little bit more effort to solve this. Alright, so let's move on to example number 13. Okay, so we have x cubed plus 2x squared minus 9x minus 18 equals 0. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is, because we have 4 parts there, and I can't pull an x out because I don't have an x here. So what I can do is I can group these. So when I have 4 digits like this, I look and say, are there 2 digits that I can pull some, or are there 2 terms that I can pull stuff out of? Well, yeah. If I put parentheses around there, I can pull out an x squared and be left with x plus 2, right? And that's the same as this. Okay, well, let's look at the same thing here. I could pull out, if I made those parentheses, I could pull out a 9 there and be left with x plus 2. Okay, now notice that I pulled a 9 out of the 18, but I not only pulled a 9, I pulled a negative 9, so a minus 9. So when I distribute this 9 back, I need to be able to get a negative 18. So a negative 9 times a negative 2 would give me a positive 18. So this needs to be a plus 2. So when you pull a number out, when you factor a 9 out, make sure that when you put it back in, you get the number here with the sign that you were looking at originally. Now if I would have left this a negative 2, this negative 9 would have made it a positive 18, and I can't have that. So when you're distributing this back in, make sure you're going to get the original number back. So a lot of times students make a mistake because they don't worry about the sign. Okay, so when I do this, if this number here, if this grouping here and this grouping here is the same, I can just write it once and group what's outside of the parentheses together, and I get that. Now look at this. That is from earlier work, difference of 2 squares. Difference of 2 squares says you take the square root of the first term, square root of the second term, make 1 plus and 1 minus. And then I still have my x plus 2. Now, remember up here, my largest exponent was a 3, so that means I'm going to have 3 answers. So x is going to be negative 3 for this one, positive 3 for this one, negative 2 for that one. So those are the 3 answers that I get for this problem. Alright, so let's look at the last problem, the last example here, and we will be done with this long, drawn out assignment. The sum of the squares of 2 consecutive integers. Remember, a consecutive integer is a number like 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7, 8, that follow each other. So the sum of the squares, the square of 2 consecutive integers. Okay, so if one of the numbers is x, what is the other one? X plus 1, because consecutive means one bigger than the next one. Alright, so the sum of the squares. So if we take the first one and square it, and we take the second one and square it, it says the sum. It says if we add them together. We get 25. Okay? Find the 2 integers. So what we're doing is looking for this number, and we're looking for this number. Alright, so we've got that mess there, so let's go ahead and do the FOIL method there. So x squared plus, and then let's do the FOIL. In fact, I'll put it in parentheses. Alright, first number squared. Let's go ahead and do this as x plus 1 times x plus 1, so we can look at doing the FOIL. So the first number squared is x squared. And then we do the outside, and we get 1x, and then we do the inside, which again is 1x, and then we do the last, 1 times 1. Okay, so let's do what we have in the parentheses there, x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 25. Okay, now let's add these two. Alright, now we have to set it equal to 0. Okay, I'm assuming you know what I did there. I subtracted 25 from both sides, and 1 minus 25 is negative 24. Alright, let's move all that up. Now I'm going to factor a 2 out of this. Okay, and when we factor a 2 out like that, we can just make it go away. If it were a variable, we couldn't, but since we just took a number out of there, it's just like reducing a fraction. So if we can take a 2 out of each one of these, we just reduced it, is what we did. Now I can make 2 parentheses, because it's equal to 0. X, x. 2 numbers multiplied together give me 12, added give me 1. So let's see, we've got 6 and 2. Now we can't add those and get 1, but 3 and 4, the difference between those two is 1. And the sign of the biggest number is there. And because this one's negative, positive 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. So x equals negative 4, what makes that 0, and 3, what makes that 0. And that ends up being your answer there. Okay, so kind of a long lesson, but that is kind of the answer. I guess I should go back, because the question said, what are the 2 integers here? So if one of the numbers is negative 4, the next number is going to be negative 3. Okay, because if you remember right, let's see if I can move all this. We started out with our 2 integers here, one being x, one being x plus 1. Okay, so let's get that stuff out of there. So if one is negative 4, then x plus 1 is going to be negative 4 plus 1, which is going to be negative 3. So that's an option. The other option is if one of the numbers is 3, the other number is going to be 4. So, we actually have 2 sets of numbers that work. Negative 4 and negative 3, those are consecutive, and if we plug them back into the original, they work. And 3 and 4, they're consecutive. They're one right after the other, and if we plug them in to the original one, those work as well. So both sets of numbers will work here, and you have to go back and check, because sometimes one of the sets of numbers won't work. So you have to check it to make sure. Okay, so that is it for lesson 7.1 in intermediate algebra.